Okay, we are doing our last lecture. Here we go. Human impact on biodiversity. All right, so obviously we are messing up the planet and we need to look at all of those things that we do. So one of the number one things we do, we cut stuff down, we deforest. So we are losing carbon dioxide storage here. We are sending carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere when we burn or cut down the trees. We are clearing habitat. We are losing nutrition, losing nitrogen and phosphorus from this plant. We are not getting oxygen made by this tree anymore because we cut it down. So we're going to lose oxygen. There's a lot of stuff going on when we deforest. All right, we are not good at managing our waste. First of all, we put too much in the landfill. Too much in the landfill. We should be separating our waste out to recyclables, food composting, paper, plastic, glass, all that stuff. We should be putting very little into our dumps, and we should be careful what we dump because sometimes we do toxic chemicals, which has other consequences like water pollution and air pollution and wrecking the soils and hence the land. And the other thing we're doing is we're contributing to global warming by combusting or burning fossil fuels. And that's taking long-term carbon in the carbon cycle and converting it to atmospheric carbon. So we're taking a rock of carbon, we're catching it on fire, and we're sending it up as carbon dioxide in the gas form. And that's not what nature intended us to do with it. Okay, so we are losing biodiversity all over the place. The biggest hotspot of biodiversity is the tropical rainforest, but it is now spreading to all of the ecosystems, all the biomes. And this is just a fun little moniker to remember, HIPCO, the reasons we have biodiversity loss. So first of all, the habitat is fragmented. So we have a piece of habitat and then we start running roads through it or we burn some of it and now we have little pieces of habitat that are fragmented and animals and plants can't jump from spot to spot to make it one nice habitat anymore. The introduction, either by people or just by nature, of invasive species, they can cause biodiversity to go down. Pollution, water, air, soil, can affect the biodiversity of an area. If they have no range of tolerance for the pollutant, species are going to decrease. Population sizes, um, predator-prey relationships, things that are in balance for ecosystems can affect the biodiversity in an area. The changing climate, that range of tolerance for temperature and hence the weather and water and humidity and all the things that go with it can affect biodiversity. And humans over exploiting the land, cutting down the trees, taking out the water to bottle it in plastic cups, taking away animals because they're cool and they want them or they're poaching them. So overexploitation of plants, animals, and resources can cause biodiversity to decrease. So, put what I said over here, just be able to explain each of the HIPCO things and why they affect or how they affect biodiversity. Okay, so that habitat fragmentation, it changes and it depends. If you're a small plant, you don't need a lot of habitat. If you're a big cat, you need a lot of habitat. So the amount of fragmentation varies for each species and by different amounts. Things that can cause a habitat to become fragmented, roads, you can see them cutting through the habitat. Agriculture, clearing it out to grow non-native crops and bare land. Pipelines to carry our oil. There's not a picture of it here, but it would be running through here. And you have to clear out a section for the pipe to run its oil. Development for houses and buildings and neighborhoods and stores. And logging. We want the wood, so we'll cut down sections to log for lumber. And so a nice big habitat goes from this state over to this state, and there's less territory, less resources, less niches, less food, less predator, less prey. Everything is less, less, less. So it's going to make biodiversity go down and decrease. The climate change is also related to habitat loss. So if we have a range in temperatures, certain plants can't handle big changes, and so we're going to have a decrease in biodiversity. If it's too cold, if it's too hot, certain species can't adapt. So we could have high temperatures or we could have low temperatures, and they're going to end up decreasing the biodiversity in a habitat. The amount of rain. If we get a drought and it's really dry, we're going to have a decrease in biodiversity. If we have flood, we're going to get a decrease in biodiversity. All these little things can affect it either way. And we have talked about this before. The sea level rising is going to kind of be like the flood situation. And we're going to lose habitats. We're going to lose places to build for humans and animals and plants. And it's going to cause a decrease in biodiversity. Habitat loss causes that. Okay, so interesting graphic. So if we're looking at the biodiversity of different things, a lot of things affect other things. So we can see that Mediterranean ecosystems and tropical ecosystems provide goods and services and money, but they're also homes to unique species. And this is a problem because of our demands for fancy coffees or cocoa beans or whatever it is. They come from this little tiny area, and then all these unique organisms that only live in this little tiny area are affected because we're taking it out. We're exploiting these resources for, our coffee, our unique crops. So you got to be careful because that little thing you want might come from a really specialized area that's killing another creature on our planet. Do you really need those things to come from those places? So be aware of your labels and where your stuff comes from. Not only does it come from far away, so you're using lots of fossil fuels to get it to you, you're wrecking other guys' habitats and wrecking the biodiversity of the world. You might be causing an extinction. Remember when we talked about palm oil a long time ago? Same idea. All right. A buzzword, a biodiversity hotspot, is a term for a lot of biodiversity in a certain area. So the coast of California is one. What? Look at a lot of South America. A lot of Mexico has it. The Caribbean, all down the coast of South America. So all these places have a lot of unique species and have a lot of variety. And notice a lot of them are on the coastline. So if we have sea level rising, we could start flooding these biodiverse hotspots, and that could be a big problem. All right, another concept on this little unit is domestication. So taming everything and using it for our economic purposes, for the economy, and not so much the environment. So agriculture has been driving evolution, not natural selection. We have changed our apples, we've changed our cows, our meats, our bees. We've changed everything so we make more money from it. So doing this has influenced almost all of the biomes. We've replaced grasslands and savanna for farmland. That's not okay. Farmland is not a biome. So we've displaced a lot of biodiversity by doing that. But when we choose how things go, we affect the water systems. We're irrigating our crops, so there goes the water cycle. It's out of balance because we're sucking out all of the aquifer to water crops that are super thirsty plants instead of drought tolerant plants like the grasses in the savannas. We have to add fertilizer, which is going to alter, add water, which is going to alter the nitrogen and the phosphorus cycles, and that is going to put an imbalance in that ecosystem. We're having more and more carbon emissions because we're burning fossil fuels to make all of our equipment run and go and harvest and till the dirt and harvest our crops. So instead of having a lot of variety, we're decreasing our species richness and we're decreasing our diversity. And we only have a certain number of species. Some species used to be not a pest, and now they are. So an example, the moth used to never touch the alfalfa plant, but the plant that was in the natural habitat for the moth got taken away so we could plant alfalfa crops. So the moth had to adapt, move, or die, so it chose to adapt and start eating the alfalfa plant. Now it's a pest. Didn't used to be, but it had no choice. It had nothing else to eat. So we're causing a lot of this too, humans. Another great example are bees. So I don't know if you've heard, but bees are dying off. We don't know why. We have domesticated them to pollinate our crops and not just flowering plants that are out there. If they don't help spread our crops, then what good are they? Who cares about a dumb flower? Well, if we specialize like that, the bees seem to be dying. So it seems like they kind of need the variety in flowering plants. It's probably like eating one kind of food your whole life to a bee to just pollinate corn over and over and over. They want a variety. And apparently there's something in their physiology that demands it because they start dying off and now we don't have as many bees to do our crops either, let alone our normal flowering plants. So this kind of specialization can actually collapse an ecosystem. It can really affect that base level of the food web. The plants need bees to help them reproduce. Plants don't just magically reproduce by themselves. They have to have their pollination occur with their flowers. And if the bee's not there to do it, then the food web's gone at the very base level. The primary producer is gone. That's going to affect the entire ecosystem. Okay, so what are some things we can do? How do we mitigate our horrible impact? So one of the cool success stories are these habitat corridors. Big busy freeway, let's build this green space and so the animals can go over the road instead of get hit by the vehicles coming through the road. And some ideas are to have multiple avenues because it's sometimes the predator just hangs out here and waits for the prey to come across and yum yum yum. It's like the salmon ladder all over again. But if there's multiple options, that's kind of cool, and it seems to work. So that's a success story. Man and nature getting along together. Another way to do it, we mentioned the other day, is to protect certain areas, have state parks and national parks, wildlife reserve, protected marine areas. You're not allowed to fish there, you're not allowed to hunt there, you're not allowed to be there. So those are some really good legislative movements we can do, actions to prevent further loss of our biodiversity. Another thing that's harder but is possible is to restore the habitat that's been destroyed. Notice it takes a really long time and it costs a lot of money, but it's worth it. So this is only a 3-year change. Sometimes it's 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but it can be done and nature will and can recover if we allow it to. Okay, so the big thing here in apes is be more sustainable, stop being wasteful. So this is a huge list of stuff. So prevent land conversion, stop changing land from one type of use to another, and protect lands that are vulnerable. So stop changing grasslands to agricultural lands. Just deal with what we got, or go to hydroponics, or move it to the inside a building with grow lights, or build up, or rooftop farming. There's other options. Prevent and mitigate land degradation and restore the soils that did get degraded. It's all about the soil. We need healthy soil. So we need to control its erosion. We need to improve its ability to store water in that soil. We need to keep the organic matter intact. We got to store that carbon, sequester the carbon. We need to make sure the fertility is there, it's managed, it's enhanced. Make sure we're looking at the relationship between the soil, the crop, and the water going in to grow these things, and make sure it is integrated, blended agroforestry. So a relationship between the forest and agriculture. All right, rehabilitate and sustainably manage our dry environments. Let's make sure we're handling the grazing of the livestock sustainably. Permits, free range grazing with limited number, not in one state or one place, rotating the grazing around. Harvest the rainwater. When it rains, have a big bucket and capture it and use it for watering your plants. Reclaim the sand dunes. There's a big story about that in Pismo Beach recently. That's a current event. Manage oases better. When we have droughts, what are we doing about it? How are we handling it? And then how are we doing our agriculture more precisely? Big thing, improve our productivity between our ratio of crops and water. Manage our soil. Watch that salinity level with our irrigation. And our dry land agriculture, that till and no-till farming. So there's a lot of stuff we can do. Huge industry. People major in this stuff all the time. So many aspects of it. The water, the soil, all of it. The industry. So there's a lot that can be done. We just need to be aware of it and vote for it when it comes up and not be a uneducated voter. Okay, so sustainable land management is definitely the answer to our current issues. We want to conserve stuff, we want to reduce our greenhouse emissions while getting more yield, and we want to take care of that soil. So when we do degrade the land, we get that desertification. The land is starting to become desert-like. It threatens our fertility of our land and people. So we start experiencing that human population stuff. Food insecurity, lack of clean water, which increases poverty, and we have more vulnerability to climate changes because we don't have things in place for it. So a lot of people, 3.2 out of 8 billion, that's quite a bit, are affected by this. And we have these huge economic losses going on as well when this happens. Okay, so hopefully you will choose to be a better citizen. You will be careful what you buy, when you buy, where you buy, how you buy, and if you need to buy it at all. And hopefully you'll vote for more planet-friendly legislation. You'll educate others, spread the word, and you'll be a more responsible citizen. That's my hope. I hope you guys enjoyed the class.